This is the world's tallest indoor roller coaster. It'll launch you up 186 feet in the air at a top speed of 57 miles per hour, flipping you through 2 inversions in a relatively compact layout. It is called EpiQ Coaster, and it can be found at Doha Quest in Doha, Qatar. This is the biggest roller coaster in the entire country. It opened in 2021 and was manufactured by Premier Rides. And if the ride wasn't already interesting enough, EpiQ Coaster is not entirely an original layout. Most of this layout that you see here is deep space at Imagica Park in India. That ride opened in 2013, is only 53 feet tall, and reaches a max speed of 45 miles per hour. So here comes Doha Quest looking to open up their doors to the public, and they want a big signature ride, something to put this park on the map, and they say, we want to go for the world's tallest indoor roller coaster record. So Premier said, let's take this already indoor roller coaster layout that we have sitting around and attach a massive spike to it. So instead of launching riders forward straight into a 0G roll, instead riders will launch backwards at their max speed, travel up 186 feet, plunge back down to the ground, deaccelerate down to 45 miles per hour, the original speed of the layout, and then you go through everything else which is familiar. Although the odds that someone has ridden both roller coasters is extremely slim, so that's why it's not a big deal that Premier just copied and pasted, especially since this one is now much more significant. The fact that a 186-foot tall indoor roller coaster exists is kind of wild. That spike is the signature element of this ride and is a very cool moment. But in this video, we're going to talk about the entire experience. So let's start first with when you enter the park, you're going to want to travel to the back left corner. That's where this attraction is. This spike is front and center, so is the main thing that you see. You can't actually really get a good look at the rest of the layout, but they've really dressed up this moment. They have all these hexagons surrounding this hole in the roof. And it makes for some amazing visuals because they change colors, it generates a different look and feel for the area, and I think that was a really nice added touch. The main entrance for the ride is just behind the spike, and it is all space themed. The story with EpiQ Coaster is that you are taking a test drive on a revolutionary solar-driven vessel for a flight around the gravity station. And it's all thanks to Spike the Space Hedgehog. As a first-time visitor, I can confidently say I did not get that story at all when I walked through this queue, but that's okay, because it's stylized really well. It's a beautiful design, something that you probably won't spend much time really taking in because this ride is likely not going to have a line. Doha Quest does not receive a ton of visitors from what I've gathered. It was extremely empty during my one visit, and so that meant when we went to ride EpiQ Coaster, we were quite literally the only guests in the station. It was very sad, but I guess it did mean we had our own personal exclusive ride time on this, so I mean, hey, we did get to experience it several times, and I went in pretty blind. I didn't know what the layout was going to be like. I didn't even realize that you went up the spike backwards, and I most certainly didn't realize that this ride was mostly a clone of another roller coaster. So it was all a surprise for me. We climbed aboard our very familiar skyrocket trains that Premier has. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I really do not like these trains. I've said with other Premier roller coasters that the trains were the biggest thing holding those rides back. And in EpiQ Coaster's case, it's pretty much the same situation. They're just so cramped and uncomfortable. Once you're seated, you're like nice and in there, but it is just not a pleasant experience getting in and out. Now, as you dispatch out of the station, you're going to travel through several hexagons in this weird S-bend formation. It's real slow moving. I guess it's meant to build anticipation. I again like how the hexagons are changing colors, but I just felt like this moment needed something. And it didn't occur to me until after we left that the ride needs music. It is amazing what audio can do for an experience, and something as simple as putting some speakers around the track and blasting some cool soundtrack would just totally elevate that guest experience. I'm not saying the vehicle has to have built-in sound. I'm not even saying it has to be a custom soundtrack, but that would be cool. I just think you need something to be playing so it isn't dead quiet. But what happens is you're going to take a right-handed turn to line up with the LSM fins. You're going to travel all the way down to the end. Once you've parked, the switch track that you passed over is going to slide over, so now your train is clear to launch backwards. They have more theming set up in this tunnel, including a bunch of lightning directly above you. You'll see some flashing lights, and you're just waiting for that launch to kick in. Specifically, you're going to be waiting for 10 full seconds. So that's 10 seconds that they could have a heart-thumping sound effect, or some music that starts to build and then the beat drops right as you launch backwards. There's so much potential. It really bothers me that they don't have audio. But this first launch is super punchy, and it is presumed that this is where you hit your max speed. You need to travel up to 56 miles per hour in order to make it up this spike. And you continue that build up even into the rise up. Those fins are not just on flat sections of track. It is a nice and sustained launch with a ton of kick to it. This moment really impressed me. And the moment you fly backwards into this spike, you enter this massive dome where you have all these small triangles surrounding you, lit up in this beautiful silver pattern. It feels like you're in the Epcot ball. I've ridden Spaceship Earth. I know what the inside of that actually looks like. It is nowhere near as cool as this. It is an awesome sensation, and the spike has a twist to it. You'll rotate around to your left. You only do a bit of that up front. For this moment specifically, you're gonna want to sit in the back seat. EpiQ Coaster is by far a backseat ride because this spike is so cool back there. It is wild how high up you go. It truly is epic. So there's a brief moment of floater airtime at the top. You're going to twist back down, leveling out, re-enter the main park back into those LSM fins, sliding through some hexagons into the launch tube. And this is where you would think you would build up even more speed to make it through this layout. But actually, you slow down. The only launch is that first backwards section. There's so much momentum after that spike, and this layout cannot accommodate those speeds. Now, luckily, you only have to lose 11 miles per hour, so I wouldn't say it is a harsh braking. It is just a controlled deacceleration. It's bizarre. So from here, you take a right-handed bank turn and then flip over into inversion number 1. Of our 2 inversions, our first is a 0G roll and second is a corkscrew. And overall, I would say the EpiQ Coaster is an extremely smooth experience. These trains just hug that track so well. There's no shake or vibration to them, except for whatever reason in this first inversion. There is a definite jolt there that just doesn't make any sense, because I've done other 0G rolls on Premier coasters and they're definitely not there. So I'm wondering if there's some sort of manufacturing defect or like a little kink. Do you definitely just like jolt to the side during this moment? Because when you watch the POV, it looks super smooth and like it's not uncomfortable. But as someone who's ridden a lot of roller coasters, I definitely noticed it. Now, following this motion, you continue rolling over now to the left-hand side, and you rise up real close to the ceiling into what you think would be a mid-course brake run. But actually, this is not a block brake. You have nothing to slow the train down except for gravity. And then suddenly, you just drop down. This is another reason I recommend the back row, because the drop off of this little hill is so sharp and sudden, it took us all by surprise. Definitely the strongest moment of airtime on the ride. I wish it was a bit more sustained, but it's just because you're not super high off the ground. They didn't have a ton of room to work with. This amusement park is in the center of a mall. There's shops on all sides of you. That's what these windows are for. So they definitely made the most with the space that they had. But for the most part, this is not an airtime focused experience. I would actually say it's more about positive G-forces and just like bank turns. Because following this drop, you're going to pass through some more hexagons. There's a lot of these throughout the layout if you haven't noticed. There's a left-handed bank turn and you flip over into a corkscrew. Then we have a nice long helix dropping right up against the ground. Definitely pulls some decent forces. Then you'll level out into what you think would be an airtime filled hill. Unfortunately, there is no airtime, whether you're sitting in the front or the back. It is absolutely disappointing, because that is how you end off the ride. You just take one more bank turn into the brake run. According to Doha Quest, this is a 90-second ride experience, and it did not feel short in any way. If anything, it felt like 2 rides in one. You have the first part with the launch and the spike, and then you have the rest of the ride, which feels different. Once you understand that most of this layout already existed, it's hard to unsee how odd of a combination this is to put a spike that big on a layout like this. It feels like Doha Quest wanted the record and they didn't really care how it affected the ride experience. Like, all things considered, I think Premier did a pretty good job with it. It's a cool coaster, but I wouldn't say anything about it is really wow, other than the spike. I came off it for my first time and was like, that was interesting. I'm absolutely glad I did it, but I don't think it ranks high for me in my top roller coasters. Definitely not my favorite Premier coaster, and probably not one of my favorite indoor roller coasters either. I much prefer some of the other indoor roller coasters just one country over in the UAE, like Mission Ferrari, Dragon Gliders, and Madagascar Mad Pursuit. But I'd say this was kind of on a similar level as the Storm Coaster in Dubai. Both layouts have their pros and cons. So for that reason, I'm going to give EpiQ Coaster a 7 out of 10. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I think they did a nice job with the presentation. It just needs a little sound. Wish there was different trains on it. And really, I was just hoping for some bigger elements after that spike in order for it to feel like a truly fluid experience, instead of the ride starting huge and then having to slow down that much to accommodate for this much smaller layout. It definitely felt like the result of some executives saying, we need this record for marketing to get people in the gates. And the ironic thing is it seems like no one is coming anyways. But maybe if this was your first time hearing about this coaster and it interests you, feel free to go out and ride it and let me know what you think. If you're new to Coaster Studios, I encourage you to check out the Coaster Reviews playlist organized in alphabetical order by the rides' names. Go check them out. We have reviews of rides all over the world. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.